Hey everybody, Big Z here. It is the 28th on Monday. I only have a short period of time tonight to shoot, so it's probably about 5-10 minutes. So I want to make this an intro video tonight into the one I've been waiting to post for quite a while. And it's on the timeline deception. And in the background, I have two things to share you. One is a video put up by Exploring Tartaria, and she's done an excellent job. I recommend that you please watch her video series. I'll put the link in the description. But back when I met Rosette years ago, I told her one of the things that I was working on that I had the biggest interest in was the timeline deception, and that I've looked at all these timelines by all these biblical scholars, and they're really great, but something isn't making sense. So I want to share with you as an intro tonight what I believe now to be the truth, and mostly it's based on evidence that we see from like over at Jerry's channels when the buildings cried, and the mud flood videos, and so forth. That some events took place that are recorded, but we're just not seeing them and seeing them as those events because we've been told otherwise. So let me run through this real quickly here, and then I'm going to break them into segments in the videos coming up. I've talked about this with some of you, and I think a lot of us are on the same page with this. So here, let's have a shoot at it. Let me see here. Hang on just a second. I want to see real quickly here if I can change this, and I think we're doing okay here. Our timeline. I believe we're post millennial. I believe that Christ came, he was born, resurrection, he had his death, he had his resurrection, and I believe he came back almost immediately or very soon following. And the reason why I believe that is because he said, I'll be returning in your lifetime. So if he did, then he fulfilled his promise and so forth. We see a massive destruction of buildings and structures all over Earth about the same time period as the Roman Empire was at their peak, which would have been at this time. So I think that this whole thing, he came back riding on the white horse. We do have it in historical reference of a king coming and setting up a reign across Earth. And the timeline, I think we've got 1,000 years of bullshit. Because if you look back, and we all know this, at the old coinage and old pictures, you'll see, instead of it being like 1135, it'll say J135 or I135, and the I being Asus or J being Asus. I think they've used that to cover up, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. So, because of that evidence of all that event that took place, and then the one following about the early 1800s, the one we call the mud flood, where another event took place pretty much worldwide and buried most all the structures and buildings on Earth. So why did these two events take place? And they're calling it the X factor. Well, it's not the X factor, Jerry. It is tribulation and Knucklehead being released from the pit. And so just real quickly, let me just let's intro this thing. Christ returns, and we have some, he's riding the white horse. So you know what that means. He's going to lay it out. So we have a massive level of destruction that took place about that time period where like the Roman Empire and all those structures and buildings have been decimated, but it was like they were melted, the melted buildings. And of course they use energy weapons or DEWs to do that. So I believe that took place. I believe that the mark of the beast may even have taken place then, and those saints that refused were murdered, and I believe they came back and they reigned on earth for 1,000 years with Christ. I believe mid-1800s is when the 1,000 millennial reign was up, keys to the pit opened up Knucklehead, out he came, fire and smoke arose from the pit, which I believe probably was the mud flood. Mid-early 1800s, we have Civil War, and then we have all these wars taking place, World War I, World War II, where the theme of all these words basically were destroy buildings and destroy history. It goes on today, and we go into the Samarias, like Iraq and Iran and so forth. We go in and we just decimate the libraries and all the history. Why is it so important that we decimate history? Well, let's come back to that in just a second. So let's just say the millennial reign came, and we had the Great Tribulation period, and then he's been released from the pit. And if you look over here at Revelation 13:7, it says here, and it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And all power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. If you ask me that, that's what's taking place right now. He's been released from the pit. All power and authority has been given to him because he is decimating everything. I mean, you can't argue that for a second. He's running the show top to bottom. So we're sitting here at Revelation 13:7. It also says, but this is for a short season. And it says that if Christ doesn't return early, no flesh is going to be spared. So even though it's got a timeline established, Christ is like, I'm coming back even earlier, which I believe is getting ready to happen fairly soon. Going back to, hang on a second, guys. I'm going to let this video just play out. And I think, hey, it stayed on screen. It's a miracle. Let's make sure she's rocking and rolling here. Yeah, she's running. So he's been locked up for 1,000 years. Imagine that if you were in prison for 1,000 years, you could really put together a plan for return. And if you did, what would be, if I was in his shoes, and it's really hard to think with such as a mindset of that, but one of the first things I would do if I was being released is I wouldn't want anyone to know that I'm the successor coming in and I'm only going to be here a short period of time. I want to hide the fact that it's me running everything. So I would go back in and wipe out all the previous history of this 1,000-year reign. And I would need to destroy books and records, but I would need to also all the buildings, because these buildings were built with, they're just amazing. And so I'm going to get rid of those. And the energy systems that they were using, because they were using what is called positive ion energy. It comes from the atmosphere, the air down. And positive is why you see the plus sign up on top of all these buildings and domes and steeples and so forth, because it's collecting the positive ions. They come down in steps and they go down, and they're using the frequency at 432, I think it was. So we've got free energy. I don't think anyone needed air conditioning because wasn't needed. It was just a whole different world. But that all had to go. So we left an energy system that was free, wireless, etheric energy based on positive ions to a negative ion system. It's like when we use batteries. They take negative ions and they cram them together, they piss them off, and then they get all stuck together and they get pressure built, and that produces energy. That's the energy system we're in now. And of course, we're not on the frequency we were before, which was harmonious and healing and so forth. And we're in a really negative energy system and harmonic frequency. So going back to that, I would wipe out all the previous history and I would rewrite it as a very dark period of time that was horrible. Now I've come in and I'm bringing all the technology and I'm going to show my shit. I'm going to build my buildings and my stuff, and I'm going to bring some airplanes in and so forth. And I'm going to use Earth's blood, which is oil, to power everything. So I'm going to suck it dry. Creates all these wars to destroy all the buildings, which he's done. And I think in World War II, Dresden, Germany was the last holdout of the last empire. And I believe the chancellor of that country knew it and was holding desperately on to this last little remnant here on Earth of what was Tartaria before. So my really heart belief is we're in that time period right now. And we're going to really expand into it as we go. And I'm going to bring you a ton of evidence into it, pictorial and all kinds of stuff. But the important thing is, if it is true, and we have to recognize that's where we are right now, he runs the show. He's running all the churches. He runs the good, the bad, all the energy, everything, news, media, entertainment, religions, and all that. Well, that's evidence because it's taking place. The thing for us to kind of figure out is, how long is a season? If 1,000 years was a reign, would 200 years be a season? Could very well be, and that's really fitting in really tight to where we are. It's not so much how much time we have left, this is what we do with what time is left. And why are we here? See, I believe we're angelic, and I believe that we are immortals in here in these mortal bodies. And I'm really almost to the belief now that we're not going to leave this earth. We're going to be here. We're not leaving by death. That's that close. And I believe that the saints that were, when the millennial reign was over, they didn't leave earth. I think they're still here. I think they're the ones outside the ice wall. And in Game of Thrones, they depict those people as being the Walking Dead or whatever. I think it's just the opposite. So during this time period, I know I'm running the show that they're going to return. It's going to be this great battle. Well, then I'm going to need an army, and I'm going to need a shitload of weapons. So how do I convince people that we need to amass these, this massive military? Well, up until that time period, I would get each nation warring against each other, and then making sure each nation was armed with Russia against America, America against Russia. So everyone's built these massive armies up and massive armature. And at the right time, I would bring them all together under one government and tell them that we got an invasion coming from outside this world, like alien or something. That's why everything was brought together, so I can throw down this last battle, get CERN going, get all the energy weapons up and going, and it's going to go down. I think they know that. They know the return's coming, and it is an out-all race right now to get this thing prepared. Another big thing they have to do is get free will taken from us. That's why the vaccines and the 5G are being put into place, so our free will and our minds are taken from us, and they're running us in a beehive type of thing. And just like in the movie I, Robot, if you think about this, if you remember the movie with Will Smith, when the one robot figures out shit ain't right, he sticks his head out the side of that long row of them, and they realize, there he is, there's one of them. I believe that's us. And they have set traps to get us to do just that, stick our head out the side, identify ourselves, so they could do their plan against us because we are the last threat. So I think that we have a final assignment here, a very, very, very special assignment, and we need to, one, figure out what it is, what our role is, and be prepared for it. I don't think, again, we're going to leave this earth by death. I think we're going to be here through it. Look at this little image here of all the saints up on the top of these buildings. I'm going to show you some incredible stuff. But anyway, that's where I think we are. I think that's what they've been trying to hide from us. And I would say this one more thing. If I was running a prison and I knew that my prison was very easy to escape from, so to speak, I could tell them that, hey, this place where you live is all it is, that we're on a ball spinning through space, and that you can't leave because there's nothing but endless space out there and there's no oxygen. But we've got NASA, and we'll let you know if we find something else. And for those of you little smart asses that figure it out, that we live on the flat plane, we'll tell them that there's an ice wall surrounding it, and it's impenetrable, and you'll freeze to death, and it goes for hundreds of miles, so there's no way you could even make it. And by the way, if you try, we're going to sink your boat. When I think it's just the opposite. That's how I would do it, to try to keep my little prisoners in here and not let them know how easy it might be to escape. And I have people yell at me and say, oh, you can't leave that way, but just watching the second part. So that's coming next. I got to end this thing now, and love everybody. Talk to you soon. I'm out.